The rule had been posted for years. Nobody took it seriously. The camp closed at the end of August. The boats were supposed to be out of the water, the raft was supposed to be empty, and nobody was supposed to swim. There were two of us. We knew the lake. We knew the camp. We thought we knew what we were doing. The lake didn't care. The rule was painted on a board at the top of the boat landing, and it had been there longer than I had. No watercraft after season close. No swimming. Raft is off limits. White letters going gray. A board nobody read anymore because everybody who worked the lake already knew. The way you know the feel of your own stairs. There's a place in the middle of that lake where the water goes flat and stays flat, no matter the wind. I have sat out there in the dark on 20 feet of anchored wood with no boat and no way back, and I have watched that flatness and understood that it was watching me. That it was patient, that it could wait longer than I could. I was not always afraid of still water. Denny taught me that, on the last night, without meaning to. Denny and I read it out loud to each other in funny voices, the night we broke it, because that's what the rule had become to us by then. A joke, a thing for campers and parents and the insurance company. We put the canoe in the water under that sign, laughing, and we paddled out to the raft in the last of the light. And I am the only one who paddled back. Camp Quechuan empties in a single day at the end of August. Buses at 10. The last parents' cars by noon. And then a quiet comes down over the whole place all at once, like a hand laid flat on it. By 3, the counselors are gone. What's left is the shutdown crew. And that year, the shutdown crew was 2. Me and Denny. We'd volunteered for it, because a week of closing the camp down together, with nobody else on the property, was the only way we'd figured out to have the thing we had without the whole staff watching us have it. We were careful all summer. 2 men on a summer camp payroll, in this part of the state, learned to be careful without talking about it. And we'd been careful. And the reward we'd promised ourselves was this. The last week of August, the camp hours, the lake hours, nobody for 3 miles in any direction. We were not expected anywhere. Nobody knew we were out there, and nobody would come looking for days. And we'd arranged it that way on purpose. And we'd been glad about it. We drained the lines and pulled the swimming docks and hauled the canoe fleet up into the racks under the boathouse. All week. Sweating and easy with each other in a way we never got to be. And on the last night, with everything put away and the sign-off sheet all but signed, Denny looked out at the water going gold and then blue and said we should take one out to the raft. The raft was the last thing still in the lake. A wood and barrel platform anchored out in the middle where the swim tests were run. 20 by 20. A diving tower on one corner. It was supposed to come out, too. But that was a job for the county's pontoon crew in September, not for us. So it sat out there, alone on the flat water, and Denny wanted to take a canoe out to it and drink the beers we'd hidden in the mess hall cooler and lie on the boards under the stars on our last night with the lake to ourselves. I said the sign, I said it like a joke, because it was a joke, and he read it to me in a preacher's voice. No watercraft after season close. And I read the next line back to him, lower and dumber. Raft is off limits. And we laughed and put the last canoe in the water and paddled out to the raft in the dark coming. And for about an hour, it was the best I have ever felt in my life. 2 of us on our backs on the warm boards, the beer cold, the lake dead flat and holding the last light. The camp a black shape behind us with no one in it. Denny's hand found mine on the wood between us. We didn't talk much. There was nothing out there to be careful about, for once. No staff, no campers, no board with a rule on it that could see us. Just the water, all around, holding still. I thought it was holding still because it had nothing to do. The canoe was tied to the raft's ladder with a painter line, a simple half-hitch Denny had thrown, and I was looking right at it when the lake took it. The water was flat. There was no wind, no wake, no wave. The canoe sat alongside the raft the way a canoe sits, and then the bow of it dipped. Just dipped, nosed down, the way it would if a heavy hand had pressed the front of it, and it slid forward, and down, and under, smooth, without a splash, the painter line paying out taut off the ladder, and then snapping tight, and then snapping through, and the canoe went down into the black water, bow first, like something had reached up and taken it by the nose, and pulled. It didn't swamp. A canoe that fills with water settles and floats low and wallows. You can bail it, flip it, save it. This one was drawn down, whole and dry and fast, and the flat surface closed over the last of the stern, and there was a single spreading ring, one ring, widening out across the surface of the lake. And then the lake was flat again. And there was no canoe. Denny was up on his knees at the edge of the raft, saying, "No, no, no," low, reaching a hand down toward where it had been, like he could still grab it. I got hold of the back of his shirt without deciding to. Some part of me, faster than the rest, did not want his hand near that water. We knelt there. I told him it must have had a leak, must have taken on water while we lay there not watching, must have gone down slow and we just caught the end of it. I said it fast and I said it twice. And Denny didn't answer, because we both watched it. And you cannot unwatch a canoe get pulled under a flat lake, bow first, with the painter line snapping tight against the pole. We were still arguing about the canoe when the deer came down to drink. It came out of the tree line on the near shore. You could just make it out. A doe, gray in the last light, stepping down the bank the careful way deer do. And it lowered its head to the water at the edge. The most ordinary thing in the world, a deer drinking at dusk. And both of us watched it, because it was something to look at that wasn't the flat place where the canoe had been. The water took it the same way it took the canoe. No thrashing, no lunge, no jaws, no blood, no struggle. The doe was drinking, and then the water at its feet rose, not a wave, a rising, the lake standing up around its legs. And the doe went down into it, pulled off its feet, and down and under. One clean motion, and its head was the last of it. And there was a ring spreading out from the shoreline. One ring, and then the lake was flat, and the shore was empty. And a deer that had been alive a second ago was simply not anywhere. Denny made a sound I'd never heard him make. The sign at the landing was not for the insurance company. The sign was true. Everything that went into that water after close, the lake took. The canoe, the deer, and there were two of us, on 20 feet of wood, in the middle of it, with the dark coming down, and no boat. And the whole flat, patient lake between us and any shore. We had until morning to figure it, or we thought we did. Nobody would come. There was no rescue to wait for, and we both knew it. And that knowing is what turned the next hours into the argument I've replayed every night since. Denny wanted to swim for it. Not right away. First we did everything else. We screamed for help, though there was no one. We looked at the diving tower like height would help. We felt the temperature start to leave the air, and then the boards. And we sat close for the warmth, and talked it through out loud. And none of it came out good. It was August, but the nights had started getting colder, and we were wet from kneeling, and the raft held no shelter. And a body loses heat out on open water faster than people think. Denny had done the lifeguard courses. He knew the numbers better than I did. He said them quietly. He said by morning we'd be too cold and too weak to do anything but wait. And waiting, out here, we'd both watched what waiting got you. So swim, he said. Now, while we're strong, and it has to be less than 100 yards to the near bank. He was the better swimmer. He said he'd go get to the truck, be back with the county crew and a boat before I knew it. I begged him not to. I got hold of him and I begged. I said, we saw what it did to the deer. We saw what it did at the shoreline. The deer never even got in. It was standing in the shallows, and the water came up and took it. And you want to swim 100 yards through it in the dark?
I said stay. I said someone might come.
I said the words, someone might come, knowing they were a lie. And he knew they were a lie too. And that's what made it an argument I couldn't win. Because he was right, and I was right, and neither of us could know the one thing that would have decided it. We didn't know what the lake wanted. We thought it wanted us, both of us, either of us, whatever it could get. And if that was true, then swimming was death, and waiting was slower death, and there was no good answer. Only Denny's answer, which was to die trying to live, instead of sitting still to die. I couldn't argue him out of it, because I had nothing better. I only had "don't leave me," which isn't an argument. It's just the truth. And the truth doesn't get you off a raft.
He kissed me. Quick.
Rough. Scared. He said, "Watch for my light." He had a little waterproof thing on his keys. "Watch for it on the far bank, so you know I made it." He said it like a plan. Like logistics, like if we kept it practical, it would hold. And he went off the edge of the raft in a flat, racing dive. Clean, barely a splash, the way you're taught. And he came up already swimming. That long, easy stroke I'd watched him teach to 12-year-olds all summer. And he swam for the near shore, with his key light bobbing dark in his fist. I lay flat on the boards and watched him go. And I prayed to a God I wasn't sure was listening. And I watched the stroke. It changed partway across, past the point where turning back made sense. Still too far from the bank for it to matter. Out over water I knew went down deep. The stroke slowed. That long, even rhythm I knew went ragged. And then slow. And then it stopped. And Denny was just a dark shape on the flat water. Not moving. Treading or resting or something I couldn't tell. It was too far and too dark. And I was up on my knees, screaming his name across the water, and the water carried it back to me, flat and useless. He went under without a splash. I want to tell you he was pulled. I have needed, for years, to be able to tell you he fought and was dragged down, and it wasn't a choice. And I can't, because from the raft, in the dark, at that distance, all I saw was the shape stop and go quiet, and lower into the lake the way you'd lower into a bath. Slow, almost easy, and the water close over him, with one ring spreading out. One ring, the same ring, the canoe's ring, and the deer's ring, and now Denny's. And then flat. I don't know if the lake took him, or if he stopped swimming and gave himself to it, because the cold and the dark had made going under look like rest. I have gone over the shape of it 10,000 times. I will never know whether my friend was murdered, or whether he laid down in the only bed that was left. And in the second the water closed over him, I looked down, off the edge of the raft, straight down into the black water right below me, because I couldn't look out there anymore. And for half a second, in the last of the light coming sideways off the water, the lake under me wasn't empty. It had depth to it, and the depth was full, occupied, crowded, a darkness that was made of things and not of water. Then the light shifted, and it was just black water again. And I never saw it again. I don't believe I imagined it, but I let myself say it some nights, so I can close my eyes. The canoe came back. I don't know how long after. Long enough that the shaking had set in deep, and the stars had turned. I was flat on the boards with my arms over my head, past thinking, and I heard a knock against the raft. Wood on wood. Soft. And I looked up, and the canoe was there. Alongside the ladder, where it had been, dry inside. Riding high and easy on the flat black water, like it had never been pulled down bow first with the line snapping, like it had spent the last hours tied up waiting instead of somewhere under the lake. The painter line trailed off the bow into the water, frayed white at the end where it had parted. I understood it then, kneeling there. The lake hadn't wanted the canoe. It hadn't, in the end, even wanted me. It had wanted retribution. For the sign we'd read in funny voices, for the boat we'd put in the water after close, for the trespass. And the price for the transgression was a life, and Denny had gone into the water, and the account had come out even. And now the lake was handing me back the thing the whole night had been about, the way a man hands you your change and turns to the next customer. Done with me, finished, I was no longer owed and no longer of interest. I got in the canoe. There was no paddle. The paddle had gone down with it and not come back. Only the hole, only what I needed to reach the shore, and not one thing more. So I paddled with my hands, kneeling in the bottom, across the flat middle where Denny had gone under. And the lake let me. It let me the whole way, calm and ordinary and black under my hands. Just a lake like any lake. And I came in to the landing under the sign with the gray letters, and I did not look back at the water. They never found Denny. A lake that deep, they said. The cold. They were kind about it. They said things families get told. His wife, he had a wife, his wife asked me at the service if he'd said anything. At the end. Out there. And I told her he'd talked about her. That was a lie. And I've told smaller ones every year since, to keep it standing. I don't work that lake anymore, but whoever took the job after me has learned what I learned. Or they will, because nobody who understands that water puts a boat on it after close. I saw, for half a second off the edge of that raft, what it holds. It isn't full yet. 2 people went out on the lake. Only 1 came back. Some things don't take everything. Sometimes they take exactly what they're owed and leave you the rest so you can wonder why you were spared. That's where we'll leave it tonight. If this story kept you company out there in the dark, please like and subscribe and join us for the next journey into Hollow County. Got a story of your own? A place with a rule nobody takes seriously until somebody breaks it? Email it to us. We may just tell it here someday. Until then, remember, there are places where the rules are meant to protect you from being collected. And if you ever find yourself standing beside dark water after the last boat has been pulled in, don't be the one who puts it back in the water.